Taiwan, an area of the world which, in fact, might be the one that could seriously bring U.S., China, others to blows. So why is this an issue? Well, because Xi Jinping made it an issue, right? If you look back in 1972 when Nixon talked to Mao Zedong and the issue of Taiwan came up, Mao Zedong said, that can wait. It can be 100 years. We'll eventually come back to it, but it could be, we don't want to make that issue something that changes the nature of the geopolitics now. Xi Jinping has a different course. The course that he set out is to say, we need to solve Taiwan, otherwise we have no rejuvenation by 2049. So he's put a timetable to it, right, in terms of it must be solved. You have no dream realized if this is still a problem and Taiwan is not assimilated politically differently than today into China. And he's been preparing his military for options there to be able to do so. So Xi Jinping's very hard over on every sovereignty issue. We've seen that. That's in his blood. And the PLA has been ramping up for many years now, and it's, if anything, only accelerated in terms of the investments in every warfare area, the training, the practicing for what we see there. Very destabilizing overall. The Chinese are also worried about the Taiwan sense of their own identity. If you poll in Taiwan, many of the population there would say, you know what, I don't feel like I'm a mainland Chinese person displaced in Taiwan, or that I want to go back to the mainland. I feel like I am, in my heart of hearts, Taiwanese, and I enjoy the democracy and the freedoms that I have today. And if you're Taiwan, there's been a deep concern about what China's ambitions may be, because they can't trust when China brings this formula called the one country, two systems. That was their formula. One country, China, two different systems. For a time, right, people were thinking perhaps this is the way that you might find some middle ground here. And Hong Kong was sort of the test case, right? They turned over Hong Kong, the Brits did in 1997. Hong Kong was supposed to have 50 years of autonomy, and that suddenly ended, didn't it, right? So the Chinese got impatient. They wanted to have more control over Hong Kong a lot earlier. The Chinese approach to Hong Kong was to decide how their chief executive was going to be chosen, and then did other things that eventually created some instability there, because people rightly took a look and said, they're changing, they're beginning to extinguish the freedoms that we've known, and they rose up in the umbrella revolution and in other ways that you saw. And the Chinese then said, hey, there's just instability, they will crush it. And they cracked down, and that democracy essentially has been extinguished for all intents and purposes. It's there in name only. If you're Taiwan and you take a look and go, oh, I'm being offered this one country, two systems formula too, it means nothing, right? If you see Hong Kong and where the Chinese decided to go with Hong Kong. So if you're in Taiwan, you'd say, if I actually politically unite with this regime, I know what's coming, right? And it will be not my own system. It'll be an assimilation essentially into the Borg. So the Chinese are sensing this too, and so they think that perhaps time may not be on their side. The other issue at hand is, this driving some of these issues is whether or not Xi Jinping believes that because he's over-leveraged so many countries around the world economically, that he can get them to essentially stand pat, be mute, not participate in sanctions, or essentially do nothing if he goes. And that's part of the calculation. So anyway, for the near term, we've heard a lot about the 2027 date. The Chinese, Xi Jinping set that out to say, get ready by. It's not an iron countdown to 2027, as far as we know. But essentially is, I want the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, to be ready to do anything I ask them to do with regard to Taiwan, no matter how hard it is, no matter if it's taking over Taiwan with an invasion, and no matter if it also involves U.S. intervention, you need to be able to handle it, PLA. And he's doing everything in his power to drive that PLA to be ready for that kind of event, right? And in doing so, creating a huge amount of disruption, a huge amount of anxiety, a huge amount of instability in the Western Pacific, right? So today you're already seeing the coercion tactics. The Chinese would love to be able to not go to war and to simply have Taipei conform and start talks to politically reunify. That is the gamut that you see with increased activity all around Taiwan. Some of it is punishment to Taiwan. It's punishment on Taiwan to demonstrate a signal to the United States that the trend of Taiwan thinking about, more than just de facto independence, has to be arrested and is a form of warning that's coming through military forces. Because if you're Chinese, your diplomacy, your informational activities, your economic activities didn't change the nature of where things are headed now, right? The Chinese think there's a slippery slope that's moving away from them, and they have to arrest that negative trend. And so that's the reason why they're using what's left to them, which is military force, using more overt military means to then go after Taiwan. Savvy? So the question is, if those don't work, and Xi Jinping is pressuring, is it going to be something more violent later on? And this is the huge question mark which all the Indo-Pacific is very concerned about.